shot gave me 10, yeah.
Things are getting incredibly fascinating in the AFC West. In the span of 1 week, this division has been completely turned upside its head, and with the most recent move that the LA Chargers made, and no, I'm not talking about the Khalil Mack trade, this division's officially become the most interesting division in the entire NFL, at least in my opinion. Now, before we get to the content, we're giving away $500 to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. We're giving away another $500 to a follower of ours on Instagram. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Personally, guys, I thought when the Los Angeles Chargers were able to swing a huge trade for Khalil Mack, I felt like that might have been a two-part trade. It seemed like they were building something down there, because when they did acquire Khalil Mack, immediately what I was thinking is, okay, this is so they could defend Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes with a little bit more efficiency. But I also thought that they were kind of lacking in the cornerback department. Now, don't get it twisted. In terms of their safety, they have Derwin James and Nasir Adderley. Nasir Adderley is definitely stepping up, and Derwin James is probably, you can make the argument, the best strong safety in all of football. Earlier today, Derwin James had some interesting tweets that he put out for us to see. Usually, whenever a player posts the eyes emoji during free agency, it means that they are hinting to something big happening. Then there was two eyes that came out, and before you know it, all of a sudden, you're hearing that the LA Chargers made yet another splash in free agency, because according to Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter, the LA Chargers are signing JC Jackson to a huge deal. 5 years, $82.5 million that invoices $40 million guaranteed per source. Well, includes not invoices, but he can invoice them too. This is a remarkable story because JC Jackson was an undrafted free agent. He really thrived with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, and as a result, he is finally getting a tremendous payday. I honestly love what the LA Chargers have done so far this offseason. First, making sure that they retain Mike Williams, a wide receiver that I'm expecting to eventually be their wide receiver one over Keenan Allen sooner rather than later. And then they decided to invest heavily on the defensive side of the ball to give Brandon Staley, who, bear in mind, originally was a defensive coordinator for the LA Rams, some really remarkable players to work with. I mean, you have Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack coming off of the edges at this point. You have Linval Joseph as your nose tackle. You have Kenneth Murray as your linebacker, and more recently, they just went out and signed the best cornerback available on the market. If you guys want to get an idea of how remarkable JC Jackson's been, obviously Trevon Diggs for some reason has been stealing this man's thunder. These two, and I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, these two don't even belong in the same sentence in terms of what they bring to a football field. JC Jackson has 25 interceptions throughout his entire career. If you just look at his Pro Football Focus grades, he's been a tremendous player in coverage and run defense, especially this past year. He should be entering his prime years, especially at the age of 26. He ran a 4.46 40-yard dash, so he has speed. I mean, just go look up highlights of this guy. He is absolutely tremendous. I always really liked the pairing of a remarkable cornerback with really good pass rushers, which is what the LA Rams did with Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. And once they were able to get that last piece this past year in Von Miller, it made it really difficult on opposing offenses to stop them. Now, it seems like the Los Angeles Chargers are doing what the LA Rams did, but they don't need to go as all in as the LA Rams did, because their quarterback that they are building around, Justin Herbert, and we mentioned this in the Khalil Mack trade video, is still on a rookie scale contract. And this is the beauty of hitting on a quarterback very early. When you hit on your QB this early and you know he is a stud this soon, you now have the luxury of not having to pay him very much. You don't need to pay him one of those exorbitant near $40 million a year contracts. So you can invest that capital in bringing in studs like JC Jackson and Khalil Mack to team up with Derwin James and Kenneth Murray. You could bring back Mike Williams and have him team up with Keenan Allen. Hell, you still have Austin Eckler. You have an offensive line that's really coming together with the likes of Brian Bulaga, Corey Linsley, and Rashawn Slater. That was an absolute hit of a draft pick. I feel like the offense is already set up over there. Maybe get yourselves a wide receiver 3 if we're really being nitpicky. Maybe take an additional linebacker in the NFL draft or additional corners in the NFL draft. At this point, the Chargers are past that threshold where they are looking for talent on their roster. They have everything they need. At this point, they are looking for depth on their roster, and that's a really remarkable place to be. To give you an idea, man, Justin Herbert in his second year last year threw for over 5,000 yards, had a 66% completion percentage, threw for 38 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. This team is an absolute Super Bowl contender.
But this is where things get really fun.
Dude, they are in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs. The Denver Broncos are pretty damn good too after the acquisition of Russell Wilson. I feel like once the acquisition of Russell Wilson went down, the Los Angeles Chargers were thinking,
okay, we need to figure out a means to counteract this.
I think now we could all agree that the AFC West became the best division in football. I cannot wait to see Patrick Mahomes facing off against Russell Wilson twice a year, or the LA Chargers facing off against Patrick Mahomes or Russell Wilson twice a year each. And I don't mean any disrespect to the Las Vegas Raiders. It just seems like the other teams that we are mentioning
are on a completely different tier.
Now, the question is, will this be enough to beat the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, if you go back to last year, there were instances where the LA Chargers were extremely close. There's this one argument that they could have potentially beat the Kansas City Chiefs if they weren't so aggressive on fourth downs and left that many points on the board. Obviously, Brandon Staley is a huge analytics guy. He did what he felt like was the best thing to do to put his team into positions to win. It's really interesting to see a team go from not making it into the playoffs at all whatsoever to, in my opinion, you could roast me for this, a Super Bowl contender. Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa off of the edges. Kenneth Murray as your linebacker. My relentless optimism about Kenneth Murray aside, between Derwin James, JC Jackson, Asante Samuel, Michael Davis, Nasir Adderley, and Tavon Campbell, maybe Kenneth Murray takes the next step this year. Derwin James is already a very solid player. The Los Angeles Chargers aren't a defense that you want to face off against, especially if you're an opposing QB, especially if Asante Samuel could take that next step. And I have a feeling with JC Jackson in that locker room with him, I think that has a very high likelihood of happening. But that's my take on the matter. What do you guys think about the new look LA Chargers defense? Do you think I'm going too far by calling them a super team? Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about the recent additions, man. This is an absolute scary team in my opinion. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.